Good morning, everybody. How you going? Tom Putt here, and I'm here today for yet another episode of Tuesday's Tip. Had to think about that for a second. Tuesday's Tip. Let's make sure that we're going live to this big wide world here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like we are. Excellent. Great to have you on board if you're listening here today and watching as we're going to deep dive into converting photos in Lightroom from color to black and white. Okay, so I had this request a couple of weeks ago, so I thought we would just jump in and have a chat about that for a second. There's some relatively easy techniques to use here, so no need to get overwhelmed by all of this. If you have a question, just chuck it in the comments. Okay, here on Facebook, just in the comments section, just write your question there. Preferably put the word question in big capital letters at the start there, and that way I've got an idea that you're asking a question in the first place. The easiest black and whites to convert are these ones here that have a lot of contrast in the first place. So, you know, something like this where you have strong blacks and bright highlights are the easiest to convert. Now, what do you convert to black and white? Well, whatever you like, to be honest. I often convert pictures to black and white that don't have a lot of color in the first place. This does have a lot of color, but let's go ahead and do that anyway. Just come in here to the develop module here in Lightroom, and you see up here in the basic tab, you've got treatment and it says color or black and white. So if you click black and white, it automatically takes it from color to black and white, turns it to monochrome, okay? It's a bit like taking the saturation down to the far left and stripping all of the color out of it, okay? Now you notice here that we've got a pretty good black and white. It's quite strong. When I say a pretty good black and white, what I like in my black and whites, as I said earlier, is strong blacks and bright highlights, okay? Strong blacks, bright whites, and not too much muddy stuff, not too much of this mid-gray, okay? So in that, this is a perfect example of what I would do in order to make this even stronger. We've got some great detail in the sort of shadow areas here of these riders on the horses, and this is a beautiful dolphin alongside of it here. This is not a setup, guys. This is a natural setting. This is what happened a few months ago. Let's see, when was it? It was down at 30th of June there, down on the Mornington Peninsula here, near to where I live, where we had a very cold morning with this mist coming off the water. And they take their horses down there to just to give them a bit of a beach run along the sand and give them a bit of exercise through the water. And good morning, everybody. G'day, Ian, Barry, Maribi, Linda, and another Linda. Yeah, and anyway, this dolphin came along, which happens occasionally, apparently, and the horses absolutely loved it. You can see the smiles on the faces. She's got her mobile phone out, etc., etc. But if we have a look at the histogram, you'll actually see that we don't have strong blacks and we don't have bright highlights because we've got this gap in between where the histogram ends here for black and all the way over here, which is 100% black. So in fact, our blacks are sort of a darker grey, and the same with our whites. There's a big gap between where the histogram ends here and where the actual edge of the histogram is. So 100% white is way over here, but yet in fact we've got our whites sort of being a dullish grey as well. So what I would encourage you to do is one of two things. You could add contrast, and look what contrast does. Contrast pulls the histogram to the sides, so it's making the blacks blacker and the whites whiter. But even though we've taken that contrast slider all the way to the right, we still haven't made the blacks 100% black or the whites 100% white. So we can add to that. We can take the black slider and we can drag that down to the left, and we can take it to there, for example, and we can grab the white slider here and we can take that to the right, and now we've got a much stronger in contrast black and white image. I'm not sure what you prefer. Let's have a look at the conversion here. That's the original conversion to black and white. And then that's what I've ended up with. As you can see, it's much stronger in contrast. Let me know in the comments what you love most. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer this straight conversion, or do you prefer where we have really increased the contrast there to make the blacks black and the whites white? What I really notice about this picture is a couple of things. When it's in color, I really enjoy this sky above. I think it gives some really nice balance. When we go to black and white, it just seems like a white sky. So in fact, what I would do is I would actually crop this picture and get rid of a lot of that white at the top and also this foreground here. You can see there's a difference when you look at a photograph in color versus black and white in terms of the content, in terms of, right, what's really catching my eye? Where is the distinction between the black and the white? Where is their greatest areas of contrast? You know, here we've got, what I really like about adding this extra contrast to this black and white is the fact that these horses really pop and stand out against the white mist in the background there. So, you know, we could leave it like that. Loving the comments here. Some are saying that they prefer the somewhere in between. Others are saying that they really like the increased contrast in the black and white. Look, that's really up to you. There's no hard and fast rule. At the end of the day, if you're saying to me, you know what, I actually prefer perhaps a little bit like that, that's okay. If you prefer a really strong black and white, you can go with something like that. If you'd prefer to see the detail in their faces, etc. Okay? As Ian's saying there, I like rich blacks and vibrant whites, so therefore he uses these whites and black sliders. Yeah, you won't always get that using this contrast slider, but you can always pretty much get those strong blacks and bright whites by using these black and white sliders just down here. Okay? Let's have a look also. You can also add a little bit of clarity to make things pop as well. What clarity does is it works with micro contrast. So areas in the picture where there's not a strong distinction between black and white in terms of the pixels sitting alongside each other, but what they actually do is if you've got a black pixel sitting along against a white pixel, the black pixel will say, hey, I'm black, I'll be blacker. Hey, you're white, you be whiter. And in doing so, it adds micro contrast to the picture, which gives the appearance that it's actually sharper, which is what clarity is all about. So you can see here that's making a real difference. Now, I wouldn't necessarily add clarity to this photo. Why not? Because I don't want to take away that beautiful misty softness in the picture by adding clarity, because adding clarity is going to sharpen the picture. And you see it's sort of against what this picture is all about, which is all about that beautiful mist and softness. You could take it the other way and even increase that softness further by taking the clarity slider down to the left. But I digress. We're going into a different topic there, which is more about sharpness and creating mood rather than a black and white picture like we're doing, or black and white conversion like we're doing here. Okay, so just to reiterate, if we were just to go back again, let's just reset this picture. You'll see, let's undo that. Okay, undo being Command Z or Edit Undo. What I actually did was wiped out the fact that I was filtering my library based on these being a 5-star picture, and it just wiped out the 5-star, and of course I lost the picture altogether. So here you go, you've got the color picture. You can convert it to black and white here. You can then crop the image however you like, okay, based on the fact that all the detail is through the middle here. Look, if you wanted to add some more detail, why wouldn't you go, hold on, in the color version, that sky has some really nice cloud, but in the black and white version, it tends to get lost. Why don't we add a gradient filter to the sky, darken it, add some contrast to the sky, for example, maybe a bit of clarity just to bring a bit of detail out, and then go back out of that gradient filter there, and then now we've got that detail in the sky that you may well want to keep. I'm not sure what's happening up here. I don't know if that's where I've tried to clean my sensor or whether that's actually some cloud, but either or, we'll just grab the spot removal brush here and we'll just wave that over the top of this just to get rid of this, because I find that a bit distracting. The square brackets on the keyboard make this cursor larger and smaller. If you keep your finger on the shift key, sorry, the space bar, you can then just move around, click and drag and move around the picture and press done on that, and that's just helped improve that picture a bit more. What I didn't show you when you're doing that black and white conversion, what I'd really encourage you to do is I would actually click these in the develop module, click the triangles in the top left and top right of the histogram until they've got a white box around them. And in doing so, what that means is that if you go too far in the blacks, can you see here how you started to get these blue pixels arriving? That means that you've clipped the blacks, so they're 100% black. So unless you specifically want 100% black, I wouldn't do that, because otherwise you're going to get some really strong areas in here that look a bit too heavy. Okay, a little bit too heavy in the blacks. and you're going to lose detail. Same with the whites. If you take this white slider too far, all of a sudden, wish we didn't get it. Let's do contrast as well. No, I can't even get that. If you take the white slider too far on this side, I'm just playing around with this for a second, you'll get these, you'll get these red pixels occurring, and the red pixels show that the highlights are blown out, okay? We don't want to do that either, okay? But in this case, even though on my screen it looks way too bright down here near where the dolphin is, on the white slider, it's still not blowing out the whites. But obviously you need to have your screen calibrated, at least to know that you're not blowing out the highlights when you're looking at the screen, for example. And when I talk about the screen calibrated, what you can do is I run on a Mac and I find they're excellent. I'm running on a 27-inch iMac this morning. And what I find is that if you actually edit the picture in a semi-darkened room and you take the monitor brightness, which you're not seeing on a screen, but if you take the monitor brightness down to about half, maybe a little less than half, that's the correct brightness of your screen in order to then calibrate your images so that when you send them off to the printer, they don't come out looking too dark. What often happens is that people turn up the brightness on their monitors all the way up to 100%, which gives this artificial brightness to your pictures. You're editing your pictures here in Lightroom, thinking they look amazing. You're not looking at the histogram closely enough. It looks bright enough on your screen, but of course it's not very bright in real life because you've bumped up the brightness of your screen rather than the brightness of the picture, and you get it back from the printer and it's 2 or 3 stops underexposed, and you wonder why, and you swear and you curse at the printer, and it's not their fault at all. It's because you haven't calibrated your screen, the brightness, correctly. Tim Marchichan asks, I'm keen to learn how to mimic a metallic silver halide effect. Is that achievable in post or anything else? Not that I'm aware of so much. I'd actually try Googling that. Let's just extend this even further just to see here that when you do convert to black and white, you see how you've got these boxes here on the side? If you click on those boxes, you've got this option down here, black and white. You've got these various treatments here in Lightroom, presets, you could call them as such, that if you sort of wave your cursor over them, or if you actually click on them, it goes through a whole lot of steps, whole lot of options here in converting your picture to black and white using various filters, mimicking various filters like red, yellow, orange, etc. For those who used to shoot black and white film, you'd remember that you'd put screw colored filters onto the end of your lenses there to give different effects. To increase contrast, you'd obviously put a red filter on, okay? So you can click through those, or you can just hover over there. Now, when you're ready, click close. The other thing you can do here is you can go into black and white here. Once you click, in the latest version of Lightroom, once you click this treatment conversion in the basic module to black and white, all of a sudden HSL isn't HSL anymore. That's now black and white. And what this is doing here is that you can see that if you actually change the mix of red and increase red, for example, in the photograph, it actually adds more contrast, greater black. And as you can see by the lady's helmet there, it's actually making the whole picture more contrast. You can play around with these. Look at what orange does. Woof! Really adds some strong dynamics to the picture. So you can play around with these sliders as well in order to help process your conversion there. So the very basic conversion is to just go from color. Let's just go back here. I feel like I'm going around the mulberry bush here, but I hope you guys are getting something from this. Let's just recap. In Lightroom, you could do a straight conversion to black and white just by going here into the develop module and going here from color to black and white, just like that. But if you want to go a little step further, you can add some contrast and or take the whites up to the right, take the blacks down to the left and increase contrast that way. You can also go into this black and white mix and play with that. And also back in the basic module here, opposite the word monochrome, if you click on those 4 rectangular boxes and open up this palette here that says black and white, you can then click through a whole lot of presets here, okay? If you don't want to play with that black and white mixer option down here, which is more advanced. You can, of course, click auto there, and Lightroom's doing its own little conversion, and you can see here that it's add a little bit of orange, yellow, quite a bit more of green, aqua, etc. And if you like that look, you can go with that as well. Now, I hope that's helped, and I hope that's given you a good example of what to do I want to show you perhaps a poor example of a black and white, okay? Now you can also buy, obviously, presets like Nik software and others to have here in Lightroom, so that here on the right-hand side, sorry, the left-hand side, my dyslexia kicking in there. Here on the left-hand side, you can have presets here, as it's got here as well. There's some presets over this side that give you this sort of black and white conversion. Let's take these off. And you've got some options down here as well. I'm not sure how they differ to the options here when you do this. I think they're one and the same. It's just a different way of looking at it. But you can see here, this is not a bad conversion to black and white, okay? But the whole picture hasn't got a lot of contrast in it in the first place. So it's probably not the best picture to convert to black and white, although that works quite nicely. I'm sort of proving myself wrong. This one could work very well in black and white because we've got some strong highlights and we've got some darker shadows there. That works quite well as black and white, but in my mind, that has a lot of sort of grey, that mid-grey that I don't really like in a black and white. It feels a bit too wishy-washy. Let's just get rid of the highlight, shadow, all this stuff here. It's done an auto conversion here. There we go, that's better. Now we can increase the whites there. Let's not blow out the whites. Although the white's blowing out here in the sky and the background's fine. You could add some deep blacks to that. That's better. That's worked out as a better conversion for black and white. It was doing an auto setting there, which I didn't particularly like. Let me just go back and see if we've got some questions there. Yeah, Linda, this is quite an easy way to convert pictures using Lightroom. Look at these. This is a classic example of a picture that's going to work really well as a black and white conversion. It's a snow scene. It's overcast. Often that rips out the color in a photograph anyway. And so therefore, if you just go to black and white, bang, add a little bit of clarity just to give that a bit of pop. Not too much because you'll end up getting a really bad halo around the tree itself, okay? So not too much. You could just add a little bit more black to make that tree really stand out. You see what I'm doing here? If I add a bit of black to that tree to make it really stand out, that's just a simple conversion and works extremely well because you've got that contrast between the tree and the background, okay? Here's one that I actually have purposely done to black and white because it was down here on the back beaches of the peninsula and it didn't have a lot of color in it in the first place. It's whitewash from the sea. It's black lava rocks. There's a bit of grey in the background here and it's not much else. Let me see if I can show you the original photo of that one there, just to give you an idea as to why I converted that to black and white. I wouldn't be surprised if I actually shot on black and white using my camera, and that's what I can do also. You can all do that. If you find that it's a really dull, overcast day and you're really going to see more by, if you really want to see more just by, you know, turning your camera to black and white, you can do so just on the back of your camera. Have a look around, Google it if you're not quite sure how to find it. And I find that really helps with me shooting my pictures if there's not a lot of color, because by seeing in black and white, you're actually using more about the form and the texture of the image and how objects relate to one another, rather than being bamboozled by the color. This is a color photograph, believe it or not. So this is a color photograph that I did down on the back beaches of the peninsula. When was this? This was back on the 22nd of June, so a few months back before COVID, or in between COVID, so to speak. And you can see here that there's not a lot of color. There's a bit of color in the water here, but that's about it, you see? A little bit maybe in the background here. So, look, some of you might get fooled into thinking, all right, I really want this color because you're so used to seeing in color. I'm just waiting for my computer to catch up. Sorry, I'm just throwing things around here. And you think to yourself, well, I want this to be color, and you take the saturation slider up, nothing really happens. It's bringing out a little bit of aqua here, a little bit of color in the rocks here, but not much else. This is a classic black and white picture because it hasn't got a lot of color anyway. So when we turn to black and white like that, it looks great. We can go in here to the crop, just crop out that rock at the bottom, just correct the horizon a little. Now we're a long way from white here, so we'll grab that white slider like I did before and make that whiter, although we don't want that too white, otherwise we're going to blow that out. The blacks are looking pretty black already. Clipped a little bit of the black in there, which we might not want. We could actually add a little bit of shadow detail just to bring that detail out in the rock. You can see what I've done there. I think the whites are a little too white there anyway. So now we've got this difference between that being the original color image coming out of the camera and that being the black and white, and I think you'll agree that that works best like that. Add a little bit of clarity. Watch how this clarity slider will just make that pop, particularly down in here. Watch the clarity slider just make this image pop, and that difference between the water coming down off that rock. Okay, let's see the comments here. What have we said here? You can make your own presets, Ainsley. Yes, so if you have done a conversion to black and white and you decide that you really like that, just click here, plus create preset, okay? And you can create your own preset in Lightroom, absolutely. All right, guys, I hope that's helped. I hope you've got some idea about what images you may well turn to black and white using Lightroom, and then when you do turn them to black and white, what to play with over here. Okay, hope that helps. Have a play yourself. Post them onto the Tom's Tribe here on Facebook. I'd love to see the results. What I really look for is strong whites, strong blacks, and then increasing that contrast once I've done the conversion. So I look forward to seeing your photos, and have a great week, guys. Okay, catch you later. Cheers. Bye.